Hello, in this demonstration, I'm going to show you how to blot, print, or transfer an image. In this case, I'm going to do it to this old, just going to say kind of crappy painting. Um, so I'm going to blot transfer the image of this really cute dog onto here. If you've never blot printed before, I would check out my blot printing basics video. It's pretty short and it's got close to 10,000 views. Very clearly shows you the basics of blot printing, which is an Andy Warhol technique. There's many ways of doing it. He used a calligraphy pen and India ink. I am going to use this needle nose tip squeeze bottle that I've filled with liquid black paint. Craft Smart brand is fine. There's many. So I've got this ready to go. You're going to need an image that you wish to transfer. And I have traced this ahead of time on a sheet of tracing paper. I've taped it down almost like a book hinge, and I've taped it where I want this image to land on the painted page. Okay, let's see. So I've already done that. So this is really good if you struggle with drawing, but you want to transfer a realistic image. So let's get started. I'll show you really quickly kind of the blot printing basics because I want to test out, excuse me, this squeeze bottle and make sure that the paint is flowing properly. Okay, so I've folded this. Okay, so ink is flowing. And what I'm going to be doing over and over again is, okay, so you're going to get folding this sheet of paper over and get this blotted image. Okay, so this is really lovely. I get a precise line, but then it's going to blob out unpredictably in certain areas. Something to practice because you don't want a huge blob and then it's globbing all over the place. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top and work my way down on this image of a dog. Now, what's nice about this needle nose tip applicator is that the paint coming out is not going to dry right away. Whereas if you're using Andy Warhol's technique of India ink with a calligraphy pen, you have to work much smaller sections. Otherwise, the ink will dry too fast. Okay, so I'm going to fold that over, lightly rub that. You can see the ink blotting or spreading out and printing onto this painting. So I'm going to work from the top down so that I don't smear my hand. I'm going to just go all the way into the paint. Now, when I did my tracing, the dog has a lot of fur there. I can't do all of the fur, so I try to figure out the basic, go over like the basic shapes, the strongest shapes. And this demo is not about getting a perfect image. It's about giving you the basic idea. I'm going to do the whole thing. And then I got to decide, am I going to fill in the surround or am I going to paint in the dog? Ideally, I would probably paint in the dog maybe a little bit more realistically and leave the wild background. I could do the reverse because I want to keep this video on the shorter side for demonstration purposes. I'm probably just going to paint in the surround with a wash. Okay, as I'm doing this, certain areas have these little blobby blobs, which you may like or not like. It's more about an overall feel or look. I can come back, like that area didn't fill in as much. I can come back and add a little bit more. And then depending on how firmly I press that with my finger, the paint is going to blot out more or a little bit less. Kind of seems to blob out at the beginning, which I'm not liking as much on the dog's face. But coming back and painting, I can rework that a little bit. Now, in the image, the dog was sitting, it appeared to be like in a pile of laundry. So I had all these kind of interesting crisscross patterns. I'm choosing to put those in. Works kind of well for mixed media. It's already kind of had different structural patterns. I could have left that out. So I choose to work more, quickly for purposes of the demonstration. I'm going to go over this line here again, make that a little bit thicker, but I wanted you to see the basic idea. One more time. Okay, now what if I want to continue these lines? And obviously I don't have enough paper to do so. I can also blot print. I can draw on the surface and then put a sheet of paper on top of that and blot. So let me show you. Okay, so then I can complete those lines that way. Okay, so now just so you can see the dog a little bit more clearly, I'm going to come in and put a wash surrounding here so you'll see the shape of the dog more. I probably would choose to do it otherwise if I was going to take this into a more finished painting, have the dog show up in this kind of wild background. Now, it's nice to save the blot on the tracing paper. That can become another mixed media piece, but I'm going to move that right now. And I'm going to do a little ink wash in here. I'm going to knock this back with some Payne's Gray. So it's this high flow. And I'm going to do a wash because I want to still see some of those wild lines and marks going on in there. And I might not go this dark, but I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit just so you can see the dog showing up a little bit more. And ideally, you let this whole thing dry, but because that blot printed ink is so thin, most of it already is. Okay, so now you can see the dog showing up a little bit more. And I think I'll just finish it, at least for now, by putting in some darker paint in the eyes and the nose so that stands out more. And what's nice about this wash is I could also, if I felt it was too dark, I can remove some of that with a rag or a paper towel. In this instance, I am using my apron. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit more black in the eyes, nose, and mouth, using some of my liquid paint that I'm going to add a little more water to with a finer brush. Okay, and I think you get the basics of this process. Now, of course, I'm already seeing, okay, if I make this a little bit darker and more dramatic here, it's going to look like that dog is really leaning against, in the original picture, it was probably a couch. So still leaning against a surface there. Maybe I leave it lighter over here. And then there was all the pattern of the laundry or the fabric going over there. I could do that. I actually quite like the face with this mixed media look, but I could bring in a little bit more realism, maybe in the paws, wider, maybe more of the fur there, and then drifting into the crazier pattern from the previous painted background. And that is it for blot transferring an image of a really cute dog onto an old crappy painting. Okay.